As some of you may know, I'm going to be doing a video on Star Citizen in the near future. So far, I've dug up about 100 sources, and I'll be featuring the Yamix and Mandalore Gaming in the video as additional sources of information based on their expertise. Now, normally I don't like to reveal pertinent information about my videos that isn't just something that's fluff. But in this case, I've discovered something that I don't think anyone else has noticed. Now, before we go any further, please try to remember that I am a complete layperson that is an expert in absolutely nothing. I literally call myself the Charlatan Wonder. Make your own conclusions based on what I present you. I'm gonna try and go slow here because some of this stuff is very complicated, and it took me a while to fully figure out what it meant, if it means what I think it does. As part of my research on Star Citizen, I was poking around the Secretary of State's corporate registry to see just what Cloud Imperium Games was up to according to the corporate filing documents. And there was nothing too interesting, aside from the fact that about a year ago, Cloud Imperium Games decided to create a parent company in Delaware, which isn't all that new or surprising. Lots of companies do that. And then an additional subsidiary a few months later for intellectual property rights. At least that's what the name tells me. What was really interesting was what I didn't see there, which was anything other than the basic statements of information, which I was about to write off as, okay, Cloud Imperium Games is a closely held corporation, so there's not much to see, whatever. But then I remembered that a lot of their business takes place in the UK, where they're developing Squadron 42 at the related name Foundry 42. So I go over to the United Kingdom's company's house, and sure enough, there is its own version of Cloud Imperium Games UK Limited for my viewing, with publicly filed documents telling me everything I wanted to know. So there's nothing too crazy. Chris Roberts, of course, has a controlling stake in the company. Ortwin Freyermuth and Aaron Roberts are there. That stuff was completely uninteresting. What was really interesting, and something that I was entirely not expecting to find, was something they filed about half a year ago subdividing the shares of Cloud Imperium Games. Now, according to these documents, originally, Cloud Imperium Games, was made up of 100 shares, each valued at 1 Great Britain pound each, so that everyone could have a tangible piece of the pie on paper. Where things get interesting, though, is that has now been multiplied by a factor of 10,000, and there are now 1 million shares of Cloud Imperium Games United Kingdom. Now, these shares are still worth collectively the same amount as they did when they were only 100, so that's not much information there. It's all just nominal shares. Now, just for some reason, they've been split into 1 million instead of 100, which is kind of odd. Why would you do that if you are a closely held corporation that feels no need to trade stock? On top of that, the next page over in the prescribed particulars about ordinary shares, which these shares happen to be, if I didn't say that already, sorry, they say, and I quote, each share is entitled to 1 vote in any circumstances. Each share is entitled pari passu to dividend payments or any other distribution arising from a winding up of the company. Which, if you were going to just be Ortwin, Chris, and Aaron, why would you need to say that explicitly? So you've established that these shares entitle anyone that holds them to votes, but Chris Roberts still holds 85% of those shares, even if now it's 850,000 shares instead of just 85. Then, about 2.5 weeks ago, the United Kingdom's Companies House published a document which is a resolution by Cloud Imperium Games, which gives me reason to believe that in the foreseeable future, Cloud Imperium Games UK will be a publicly traded company. According to the date on this document, which is the 23rd of May this year, 2018, approximately 100,000 of those 1 million shares that they recently broke up into are going to be affected by a new set of rules. And the second part of this is that there is a new Articles of Association, which has, let me see here, about 20 pages counting contents of new corporate bylaws. So now, just under 114,000 of those new shares they created last December are under some very specific rules. About 52 not counting all of the subdivision rules. Now, if you were going to just have it between the 3 original founders, why on earth would you need a rule saying that no shareholder has a right to inspect accounts unless they are specifically given that right by law? that wouldn't apply to any of the founding 3 of Cloud Imperium Games. That would only apply to an outside shareholder who purchased these 113,800 and something shares. One of the things that immediately comes to mind about the why of this is, if any of you remember, a while back, they leveraged Squadron 42 and its assets in order to secure more funding from a loan. And that was actually the original document I was looking for, which I did find on the Companies House page. Thank you, United Kingdom government. You have a very nice filing system for corporate documents. Why is this lending agreement relevant? Because Chris Roberts has previously said that Star Citizen is making zero profit right now, and that all the money they get is going straight into development. That is a pretty serious problem if you've got a major loan to repay that is being leveraged by your pet project game. Therein lies a potential solution to this problem given the documents we've seen before us. Now, Chris Roberts would not have any loss of complete control of Star Citizen and Cloud Imperium Games if he, say, gave up 10% of his 85% control according to these documents and decided to make that publicly traded stock. He'd still have about 75% control of Cloud Imperium Games UK, and now he can issue just over 100,000 stock in order to get investor cash flow into CIG, which, if that is what they're doing, I personally think that is pretty smart. You have now found a way to not have to divert your money from development costs, which you are selling your ships for, but you can now find a way to repay your loan. I get the feeling that this was also something that was thought long and hard about based on the timing between dividing up all the initial shares and the declaring of these new rules of association. It seems like this was something they considered when they initially had to take out that extra loan for Squadron 42. Now, as far as what else this possibly means for Cloud Imperium Games and the development of everything Star Citizen, I'm not going to get too much into the actual elements of funding, as everyone's talked about the 170 some million to death in addition to the loan that this issuance of stock might be trying to cover for. But instead, this now has the issue of you are inviting third parties, probably either fans with buttloads of money enough to invest in your company, or actual business persons to have a small but still voting stake in the proceedings of Cloud Imperium Games, which does include the development of Squadron 42 and possibly Star Citizen, depending on how things are divvied up between the various nation companies. Now, based on whatever they can get for that initial offering of Cloud Imperium Games stock, if we assume that they are going to offer it as stock, otherwise why would they go through all the trouble of filing these documents and divvying up the shares? That means that in order to keep the value of their company up, they're going to have to really work on things, which I can't help but notice that they have put out 2 major patches in the last few months, which is warp speed for the development of Star Citizen. So maybe this is what they're trying to do. They are working up to a publicly traded company, at least for the UK division. That way they can massively bolster the value of their assets and therefore continue to work on the game. This does come with a caveat though of, unless they want the value of their company to do a complete flatlining nosedive, they're going to need to start putting out product and start showing results. Otherwise, the value of these 114,000 stocks is going to be at the nominal value, or possibly worse if they continue to do business as usual. What does that mean? Well, that means that they're gonna have to hold to deadlines despite what Chris Roberts said. At least that's what I've divvied, and remember, I am the charlatan wonder. Now, I feel the need to state that I am doing a very large project on Star Citizen right now with 100 or so sources that I've acquired so far and the 30 pages of writing, but despite the assertions I am going to make, which I am holding close to my vest right now, I am going to state that I am largely ambivalent towards Chris Roberts, Cloud Imperium Games, and all things Star Citizens. I neither hate them nor like them. I just see them as something I can research about and tell my findings to the world. For the sake of transparency and to show that I am not pulling any fast ones on you, I'm linking all the documents I'm basing these things on in the description of the video below so that you can see them for yourselves. Make your own conclusions, see if I'm full of crap. I completely invite you to do your own research based on what I have discovered. I'm gonna cap off my findings here as I have a lot more stuff I have researched and learned about concerning Star Citizen and Cloud Imperium Games, but I am making a video on that which I don't want to completely spoil. Thank you so much for joining me. I find it kind of weird that this all took exactly 10 minutes to tell, but sometimes life just works like that. I didn't put any filler or fluff in. I gave you pure information. If you want to catch that video that I'm making, which lordy, it's gonna be a monster of a video, be sure to subscribe to me because that's coming out hopefully in the next month, provided I find time to do everything with my already busy schedule. And if you'd really like to help me out and help me create these high quality videos, please consider donating to my Patreon, which I assure you is significantly cheaper than the entry-level starships of Star Citizen and will provide you with what is, in my opinion, a lot more enjoyment. Have a nice day.